Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Please be advised that this story contains mature themes and strong language, not suitable for ages 17 and under.
Drew is seated in the holding chambers adjacent to the courtroom waiting for the trial to begin. He slept for maybe 2 or 3 hours last night, and the coffee Bree just gave him is helping to fight the pounding migraine he has. Although it's been almost a month since Lizzie's death, he hasn't been able to grieve for her. Nor has he fully wrapped his mind around the fact that he's been charged with a murder. The whole ordeal feels like one long nightmare that he just can't wake up from. All day long, his mind is clouded with thoughts of frustration, confusion, and fear. How could this be happening? Who would want to kill Lizzie? How could anyone believe I'd ever hurt her? Did anyone look into her boyfriend? What's going on at the office?
I can't believe Vince isn't allowed to talk to me. I mean, it's my company. Not a single board member bothered to talk to me before. They just assumed that I did this shit. It's so unfair. I hope the jury doesn't automatically assume that I'm guilty. I'm glad Bree is defending me. She'll make them know that I wouldn't do anything like this. I hope the prosecutor doesn't try to drag my name through the mud. And that one mean-ass detective, I hope she doesn't show her ass up. I really can't believe this is happening. I've done everything right. College degree, successful businessman, creating jobs all over the state, giving back to my community. Now they have me locked up for something I didn't even do.
Drew.
This shit is really ridiculous. And they treat people so poorly in this place.
Drew.
I wonder how many other people are in here for crimes they didn't commit. You know, when this is all over, I'm gonna talk to Bree about maybe trying to help some more of these people in here.
Andrew!
Huh? Yeah, I'm sorry, Bree. I didn't hear you.
That's because you were on one of your thought journeys. Come on. It's time for us to go into the courtroom.
Thank you, Bailiff Johnson, for swearing in our jury. Members of the jury, your duty during this trial will be to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty based only on the facts and evidence provided in this case. The prosecution has the burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden remains on the prosecution throughout the trial. The prosecution must prove that a crime was committed and that the defendant is the person who committed the crime. However, if you are not satisfied of the defendant's guilt to that extent, then reasonable doubt exists and the defendant must be found not guilty. Bailiff Johnson, what is today's case?
Your Honor, today's case is the state of South Carolina versus Andrew Braddock Sr.
Is the prosecution ready?
Yes, Your Honor, and may I add, it's nice to see you again.
Is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's begin with opening statements. Ms. Holloway, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Ciara Holloway, and I am representing the Charleston County Prosecutor's Office and the state of South Carolina on the behalf of deceased Miss Eliza Bailey. We intend to prove that on December 18th, Andrew Braddock Sr. violently assaulted and murdered his executive assistant, Eliza, in her home. At the conclusion of this case, and after you've heard all the evidence, we are confident that you will swiftly return with a verdict of guilty. The state will call 4 different witnesses in this trial. We will call homicide detectives who will testify that not only did the defendant have motive and opportunity to kill the victim, but based on his own admission, he was the last person to see her alive on the night of Eliza's death. The prosecution will be calling the victim's neighbor to the stand, and that neighbor will explain that he clearly saw the defendant entering the victim's home with the victim in a drunken state, leaving briefly and returning shortly thereafter. This same neighbor also found the victim's body in her house the early hours of the next morning. Lastly, we will call an expert psychologist who will testify to the defendant's overall character, demeanor, and psychological history. This particular psychologist has previously served as a defendant's therapist and is also familiar with him on a personal level. Members of the jury, the biased and, quite frankly, compromised defense will claim the defendant's innocence and try and paint a picture of an upstanding citizen and polished businessman. However, the state's impartial witnesses will tell you the true story of Andrew Braddock Sr.'s character. A man full of anger, resentment, prone to impromptu violent outbursts. After you've heard all the evidence, we ask that you find the defendant guilty as charged on all counts. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Sabrina Braddock, and it is my privilege to represent Mr. Andrew Braddock Sr. in the case that we are presenting before you today. Now, you have heard the prosecutor, and she has explained what she hopes will be proven, but the prosecutor did not tell you all of the facts. She has stated that my client had motive to harm the victim. However, in reality, it will be proven that my client and Miss Bailey were actually good friends who also shared a positive working relationship because she was his trusted executive assistant. We will also show that the client's claimed admission to being the last one to see the victim alive is actually an exaggeration of the statement that was made to the police when he voluntarily accompanied them to the police station in effort to assist them in their investigation of his murdered friend and colleague. The prosecutor has also explained that my client was identified as the person returning to the victim's house later in that evening, when in fact, this neighbor and supposed eyewitness has made many inconsistent statements about his ability to positively identify the vehicle that returned to the victim's house, as well as the person who was driving that vehicle. The prosecutor also claims to have an experienced psychologist who is familiar both professionally and personally with my client and can therefore speak toward his character. I will also prove to you that the credibility of this so-called psychologist will amount to zero. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as the defense attorney, I will also call witnesses. In fact, I will call 5. And each of them will be able to speak confidently and factually to my client's character. They will describe for you his relationship with the victim and will assist in painting a picture of the events that transpired on the night of December 18th. And at the conclusion of this trial, the defense will demonstrate that the prosecution, they will not meet their burden of proof. And we will ask that you find Mr. Andrew Braddock Sr. not guilty of this horrendous crime. Thank you.
Thank you both. The prosecution may call its first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Detective Robin Matthews.
Will the witness please be sworn in by the bailiff?
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Detective Matthews, good morning. Will you please share with the court your title and affiliation with the case?
My name is Detective Robin Matthews. I'm a Charleston County homicide detective and one of the lead detectives investigating the murder of Miss Eliza Bailey.
Thank you. And during your investigation, how did the defendant become a suspect and ultimately charged with the murder of Eliza Bailey?
Well, initially we were just questioning him and those in the office, trying to piece together the victim's whereabouts and events that transpired the night she died. Mr. Braddock was her boss, and he was answering our questions at his company. Then we went down to the station for additional questions.
I see. Was there anything about the defendant's demeanor that led you to believe that he needed to be taken in for questioning?
He seemed detached, preoccupied. He didn't seem to be seriously concerned or even upset about the death of his executive assistant.
So would you say the defendant wasn't surprised or that he just didn't care at all?
Objection, Your Honor. The prosecution is leading the witness. However, Detective Matthews may have perceived my client to feel concerning the victim's death is purely speculation.
Sustained. Proceed, Counselor Holloway.
Of course, Your Honor. Let me rephrase. What was the defendant's initial reaction to the news of his beloved executive assistant's murder?
He came across as indifferent. He cooperated and answered our questions. However, he didn't showcase any real emotion until after he knew he was a suspect.
Thank you, Detective. You're a witness for cross-examination, Mrs. Counselor Braddock.
Detective Matthews, when you and your partner arrived at Braddock Architecture and Associates, what was going on in the office that morning?
I believe they were preparing for a big meeting.
Yes. In fact, my client informed you multiple times that he was preparing to finalize a major acquisition. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
A multi-million-dollar acquisition. Is that also correct?
Yes.
So, is it possible that what you perceived as my client being preoccupied and indifferent was actually him processing and compartmentalizing the horribly shocking news of the victim's death while he was trying not to lose his composure before a major meeting?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay, Detective Matthews, have you ever been accused of something that you didn't do?
Do you mean criminally?
I mean, at all, ever. Let's say that even as a child, has there ever been a time in your life when someone pointed the blame at you for something you didn't do?
Objection, Your Honor. I fail to see the relevance of this line of questioning. Detective Matthews is not the one on trial here.
Your Honor, I assure you that my line of questioning is relevant to the detective's testimony and previous answers.
Overruled. I'll allow it. Please answer the question, Detective.
Well, yes. I mean, as a kid, blame is always being placed in every direction, and it's probably happened to me as an adult also.
And, Detective, when you were a child or an adult and you were falsely accused, did you speak up in your own defense?
Yes, I did.
And did you showcase emotion as you spoke up and defended your own innocence after being accused, especially of something that you didn't do?
Of course I did.
Of course you did. Just as my client showcased emotion at being accused of this crime that he also vehemently denies and says that he didn't commit. Thank you, Detective. No further questions, Your Honor.
Please state your name and title for the court.
Detective Marissa Jacobs, Charleston County Homicide.
Detective Jacobs, will you please share with us the evidence your team recovered during your search of the defendant's office and his personal vehicle?
In his car, we found blood drops between the passenger and driver's seats. We also found blood on a handkerchief in the inside jacket pocket of a suit hanging in his office.
And whose blood was it determined to be?
DNA analysis determined it to be a positive match to the victim, Eliza Bailey.
Thank you. And what was found at the victim's home?
There was no sign of forced entry, so we believe that she knew her attacker. There were signs of struggle on her body. She had multiple defensive wounds.
What kind of defensive wounds?
There were marks around her arms, meaning her attacker grabbed her forcefully, and she also had broken, bloody fingernails.
And was there any DNA recovered that belonged to the defendant from the victim's home?
We found his DNA and fingerprints on her forearm, as well as both sides of the doorknob.
Thank you, Detective. No further questions.
Detective Jacobs, during my client's interrogation, did he have an opportunity to answer questions regarding the DNA evidence? With legal representation present, I mean.
No. Once we presented our evidence to him, he became explosive and demanded to call his lawyer.
So, Mr. Braddock was never allowed to explain that Miss Bailey had broken her nail while aggressively pulling on the door handle to his vehicle, and that's how her blood actually got in his car?
No, he didn't mention that.
He didn't mention it. He didn't mention it, or he wasn't allowed to be re-questioned with his lawyer present. Can you clarify?
Once he requested a lawyer, we stopped our interrogation and allowed him to place the phone call.
Oh, and he was re-questioned once his attorney became available?
No, he was arrested and processed shortly after requesting his lawyer.
And then?
And then, it was a Friday. His lawyer never showed up, and he was sent to the city jail over the weekend.
Oh, I see. It was Friday. Therefore, everyone had their own agendas. They were ready to head out for the weekend. No time to wait for an attorney and ensure that you conduct a proper form of questioning. So just toss an innocent man into a jail cell and let the arraignment judge figure it out on Monday?
Objection. Defense is badgering the witness.
Sustained. You're toting the line, counselor. I suggest you tread lightly.
My apologies, Your Honor. Okay, Detective Jacobs. Because my client was arrested and processed, you weren't able to learn about the victim's broken nail, correct?
If she broke a nail, no, we weren't made aware of that.
And you also weren't aware that my client gave her his handkerchief to help stop her finger from bleeding, correct?
No, we weren't aware of that either.
So, Detective, did you know that the victim was so intoxicated that she could barely walk up the stairs on her own? And when she fell, my client had to catch her to help her into her house.
I believe he mentioned something like that.
Okay. And is it possible that's how his DNA and fingerprints got on her forearm while catching her as she fell and helping her up the stairs?
I suppose that could be possible.
Thank you, Detective. The defense has no further questions at this time, Your Honor. However, we do request to leave a recall for this witness at a later time.
Leave granted. You may step down, Detective Jacobs. Counselor Holloway, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, our next witness is running a bit behind. The prosecution requests that we break for lunch so that we can prep and present the witness.
Okay, we'll break for lunch and reconvene in an hour.
Sabrina and Drew are sitting in the holding chambers eating lunch. She ordered meatball subs from Drew's favorite deli, and he's trying not to spill marinara sauce on his dress shirt. It's the first real meal he's had in weeks. Not only the food, but also eating with family. He can tell she's stressed by the look on her face, and it's making him wonder if she's nervous about how this morning's session went. He needs to break the tension and get her to loosen up so that her stress doesn't show in the courtroom. He takes a napkin and reaches across the table to wipe her face.
Andrew, what are you doing? Get that napkin away from me.
I'm sorry. You just have something on your face.
What? How the hell did I get sauce on my forehead?
No, not sauce. Just a little, furrowed brow. I was trying to wipe it off.
Shut up, Andrew. You're going to wipe my foundation off. You are playing too much, sir.
Well, I was just trying to help. Your stress was showing.
Well, actually, I'm not stressed. Just perplexed a little, that's all.
Why? What's wrong?
Well, I already thought that they moved, extra fast to arrest you that day. And yeah, they had some evidence, but none of the DNA was conclusive yet. And they didn't even bother to let you try to reach Gary a second time.
Maybe they thought if they let me go, then I'd be on the run.
Even if that was the case, it just all still feels a little rushed. And I can't quite figure out why yet.
Do you think it's because my mama is black?
What? Drew, no, it is not because Mama Ronnie is black.
I'm just saying. They didn't give me time to call Mama Ronnie either. Now, we both know had I called her within an hour, the entire congregation of Mount Ebenezer Olivier Baptist Church of the Latter-day Saints would have been outside the station praying with lit candles.
I know that's right. And she would have brought Channels 5, Channel 8, and Channel 24 News right with her.
See, I'm saying. Maybe it's because of my mom.
No, But you know what? There's definitely a reason, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Trust me.
No, boy. We just went from furrowed brow to wheels turning. Somebody's about to get it.
Yep, just as soon as I figure out their angle. Andrew, I know I asked you this before, but I need to ask you this again. Is there anything at all, anything that has happened between you and Elisa that I didn't know about?
Like what?
Like anything, ever. And specifically on the night she died.
Well, we've never been intimate. You know I looked at her like a daughter. She came along the year after we lost Drina, and I think a part of me has been trying to protect her over these years because I couldn't protect Cupcake.
Is that why you let her sleep and shower in your office? You know, instead of firing her when she came in still drunk from partying the night before?
Yes, that's partly why. Also because she was an amazing EA. If I fired her, it would take forever to find someone as smart as she was, and to build the trust and rapport we had.
I know, I get it, I do understand. But is there anything else?
Well, that night when she tried to kiss me and said what she said about Drina, it wasn't the first time she's tried.
What? Her little hot ass has done this before?
About a year ago, yeah. We had the groundbreaking on that learning medical research facility for CSU. You know me, I stayed at work and was up all night. That morning I was in my office shower, and when I stepped out, Lizzie was standing there with a towel.
And what the hell happened?
I kind of froze because I didn't know what was going on. Lizzie walked up to me trying to wrap the towel around my waist, and she was leaning in to kiss me.
And
I grabbed her by the back of her arm and escorted her out of the bathroom and my office. I slammed the door and got dressed.
And did you cuss her little ass out?
No, I didn't say anything at all. I was just too stunned, and I didn't want to get upset before the groundbreaking.
Well, does anybody else know about this?
Michelle, she had come in early also, after Lizzie. She saw me walking her out of my office and nothing but a towel.
Did you ever address it with Michelle?
No. Her and Lizzie were best friends, so I figured she knew ahead of time what was up or found out afterwards. Either way, I just wanted it to blow over and things to go back to normal. I honestly think Michelle has forgotten all about it. I had forgotten myself.
Well, let's just hope Miss Michelle's memory doesn't suddenly become jogged while we're dealing with the trauma of losing her bestie. Okay, well, lunch will soon be over. I need to make some phone calls. I need you to finish up your sandwich, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
I still can't believe you got me some Grouchos. Thanks, Bree. I'll be dreaming about this sub tonight and just savoring all my burps.
No problem. And you know AJ has already suggested something for you for tomorrow. He knows you're going to love it. All right, I'll see you in a few.
Hey, are you going to finish the other half of your sandwich?
No, you can have it. But remember, I don't need you catching the itis and nodding off on me in the courtroom.
Bree, I'm fighting for my life right now. I haven't really slept in jail, and Smokey, he said that's where freedom is. So I'm definitely not going to sleep during my trial.
Who is Smokey?
I'll tell you about him later. Now let me finish my food, and I'll see you back in there.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
It's around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
We be putting in work around this joint. We here to stay around this joint. We finna take over around this joint. We ain't come to play around this joint. I don't think you're ready around this joint. Dope ass creations around this joint. It's about to get real around this joint. Hella innovation around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
Around this joint.
It's around this joint.
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 It's around this joint.
Around this joint.